This is a 1999 Sebring Convertible JXI. It's a 2.5 Mitsubishi motor in it. I'm going to go over real quickly a lot of different various maintenance things on this car and also some troubleshooting things and try to take it all in one take. When you're doing a tune-up on this car, a few other things you should do is on the grounds on the for the battery, both the positive and the negative here. Take them off, and actually you'll find two nuts on this negative, and same thing with the positive. You're going to have like more than one wire on there. Clean all those wires very well, and use some dielectric grease when you put them back together. That's a special type of grease that keeps some of the moisture out, and it actually will displace as you tighten them down, and it keeps them from corroding. Underneath here you have relays, and I think it's the first one is an ASD relay. ASD is an auto shutdown relay. That's a typical problem with these cars sometimes when they go. So what you do is you want to change that as part of a tune-up. You know you don't need to do it because sometimes inside they corrode internally and you won't see it. You get stuck. Okay, people bitch. So what you do is take all these relays and clean off all the blades on them and replace that and the ASD relay and use a little bit of dielectric grease again and install them. Now there's another ground down here. You probably can't see that very well. I'm pointing to it, and that's the ground for the EGR. Take that off and clean it again. Use dielectric grease. Here you have the spark plugs, and you got three underneath this upper intake manifold. Same thing. You're going to use dielectric grease on these also when you reinstall them, and same thing with the cap. Now, with this car, it's very sensitive to what particular brands of parts you use. You should try to use OEM all the time, but OEM is also expensive. Now, I want to go over what to do with that. Now, the O2 sensors, Bosch sensors, they're not that much. They're OEM. I changed the front one, which is a pain to get at. You want to use the special anti-seize lubricant when you install the OEM sensor for the front, and also for the second one after the catalytic converter. Now the second one after the catalytic converter is very easy to get to, but you might find that you can't drop down a wiring harness. That depends on how they wired the car together when they put it from the factory. Sometimes they don't leave you enough harness wire to drop down. You got to go underneath the console and find a connector and connect it up under the console. You got to take apart the console. It's a pain in the ass, but that's not actually how it should have been put together, but sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes it's a cakewalk. Another thing, choice of plugs. The safest route is to use the Champion double platinums. That's the OEM. You can get them after parts store anywhere, no problem. Other ones that work are Bosch double platinums, NGK double platinums. Autolite double platinums don't work right with this car, but Autolite iridiums work right, and NGK iridiums work right. Go figure. Now the crankshaft sensor is way down underneath here. Now sometimes it's easier just to go take the wheel off, take the plastic off, and get it from the side, from the bottom. And it's a 10mm bolt. Use an OEM crank sensor if you need one. You might want to change it if the car's got 100,000 miles on it. Anyway, it's a 10mm bolt. The distributor cam sensor that's inside the distributor, typically you buy the whole distributor. Now, a distributor from Chrysler is $875. That's a ripoff. Well, I'm just saying it's a ripoff. Sorry if you don't think so, but I think it is. You can get an aftermarket distributor, but you got to be careful because a lot of them don't work right. Now, the second one I put in here was a Cardone Select. That is that's tested 100%, supposedly. Each one is tested, and it's got the exact right curve as OEM, supposedly. That's $255. Now, wire choices. This drove me nuts because I couldn't figure out why a set of wires would be screwed up. But I had in here, I think I had in here originally, I'm pretty sure, was Duralast brand wires from AutoZone. They seem to work fine. I had some problems with this car actually because of the timing belt jump one tooth. I was kind of going nuts trying to figure out what was wrong with it. But I changed the wires to Federal Mongol, which was Power Max brand. I think it's called Power Max. They didn't work right. Then I said, well, let me get Bosch. Bosch didn't work right. that surprised me because I figured Bosch had to work, but maybe Bosch works with an OEM distributor. But if you use a Cardone Select distributor, you might want to use these AutoZone Duralast wires, because that works fine. It's 100% smooth. It's got 205 compression across the board and everything's fine. Now, as far as your sensors, you might want to change those out anyway. You don't need to. You could take these out and clean them. But you want to, when you do these connections and you put them back, make sure the connections are clean. And also, your oil pressure sensor, which is just above your oil filter, you get it from the bottom. A lot of times, they'll show a low pressure reading. That's usually a false reading. And a lot of times, the sensor itself is not even bad. But you want to change the sensor, but when you change the sensor, clean the connector, the electrical connector to the sensor very thoroughly with a lot of electric cleaner, and also use a slight amount of dielectric grease and make sure the contacts on a harness where it connects to the new sensor is very clean. That usually will alleviate the problem completely, because a lot of times people put new sensors in and they don't work. It's because of that connector. Another thing, timing belt. You wind up changing the timing belt about 100,000 miles. The hardest thing about changing this timing belt is getting this back, taking this back cover off, the valve cover. You have to take the power steering pump off, a power steering bracket pump off. And what you have to do is you'll have to take this manifold off. And to get at these bolts in the back, and I think they're pretty sure they're 15 millimeter, and they're on there very tight from the factory. So you'll have to use like an offset wrench and hammer them. But that's the toughest part about the belt actually, is taking off this power steering bracket, which covers that cover on the timing cover, upper rear timing cover. Also going over with these plugs again, make sure you don't take them out. It's a simple thing, but some people will do it. Don't try to take them out when the engine's very hot, because that's how you can strip threads. It's the aluminum heads, and you got steel plugs, and what happens is, to expand at different rates, if you take the plug out when it's super hot, you'll strip the threads. You do it when it's cold. You use anti-seize on the plugs. You use anti-seize on these bolts, which are 12 millimeters. Okay? Also, I think that's about it I can think of off the top of my head. I know there's a bunch of other stuff, but watch what parts you use in this car. That's very, very important, because a lot of plugs, certain brands don't work. A lot of aftermarket distributors don't work. Do not ever put an aftermarket crankshaft sensor in here, because it's hit and miss. The price between an aftermarket crank position sensor, which might run you $50, and an OEM, which is $75 or $80. It's not that much difference, and you know it's going to work. The distributor, I can see going aftermarket, because I paid $255 for that Cardone Select distributor, which is supposed to be very top quality, and an OEM is almost $900. Another thing is, you probably want to run a lot of seafoam. That's good stuff. What used to be good is Chevron Techron, and the same guy that did all the cost cutting at Chrysler, he's now his big CEO over in Chevron, and I heard they changed the formula on Chevron Techron, and I don't think it's any good anymore, as good as it was. Seafoam will clean these injectors very good. That also will clean the O2 sensors and the cat very good too, downstream, and that'll make those components survive a lot longer. Another thing to watch for is on this cap. You're going to find, corrosion sometimes on the filler neck here, and what you want to do is you replace the cap and then lightly sand down the corrosion on this filler neck, because a lot of times that's a typical leak also. Well, I guess that's about it for the basic tune-up stuff. Here's a PCV valve. It's easy to change. But make sure you go over all these connectors. You might want to re-plug in. This is your computer right here, the PCM power controlling module. You might want to re-plug this in. Make sure this connection's on here good. There's a place down in Miami, I forget the name of it, but just look around on the net, you can find it. They sell these for about $255, rebuilt and no exchange, and they're guaranteed for the life of the car. That's a hell of a lot less than the dealer, and it's all with the latest software, and that's all they do, and they know what they're doing. I forgot the name of it. They're down in Miami, but you could probably find them very easily off the internet by doing a Google search. Oh yeah, one more thing. There's a little vacuum hose. You can probably see it right here. It goes to this EGR. It runs all the way to the back of the intake, back here. It runs, a lot of times that can break, or it could be loose because there's like an elbow fitting on here that's rubber. What I used is to make sure that elbow fitting on there is super tight. What I did was I put a twist, one of those zip locks, and used it as like a little clamp. So that thing's on there like, 100% leak free. So this car right now, even though it's got way the hell over 200,000 miles, it's got 205 compression, doesn't burn any oil, and it runs steady as a rock. So, but I can tell you one thing. These Chryslers, you got to watch what you put in them. If you use all the OEM, you're going to go broke. But like I said, it's car don't select distributor. OEM champion double platinum plugs, cheap. OEM crankshaft sensor, pretty cheap. And Duralast wires from AutoZone. That all works together fine. Alright, just forgot to throw out a few tips in there. Bye.